Welcome back to the Esotericism Iceberg. We've covered the surface level concepts in Tier 1 and the somewhat specialized traditions of Tier 2. Now we're descending to Tier 3, the enthusiast level. This tier includes influential magical orders like the Golden Dawn, complex systems like Enochian Magic, foundational figures like Aleister Crowley. If you recognize most of what's in this tier, you've moved well beyond dabbling into actual esoteric study. If you would like to support this channel, consider subscribing to my Patreon or clicking the join button here to become a member. Now let's begin. First up is Theosophy. The Theosophical Society was founded in New York City in 1875 by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, Henry Steele Olcott, and William Quan Judge. Blavatsky, a Russian aristocrat who claimed extensive travels through Tibet and India, presented Theosophy as ancient wisdom transmitted by highly evolved spiritual masters called Mahatmas, or the Great White Brotherhood. Her massive works, particularly Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, synthesize elements from Hinduism, Buddhism, Kabbalah, Hermeticism, and Western occultism into a comprehensive cosmology. She taught that humanity evolves through root races across vast cycles of time, that spiritual masters guide this evolution from hidden locations in the Himalayas, and that all religions contain fragments of a single primordial truth. Blavatsky wrote that there is no religion higher than truth, positioning Theosophy as the framework capable of reconciling science, religion, and philosophy. The Theosophical Society profoundly influenced Western esotericism, despite controversies surrounding Blavatsky herself. After her death in 1891, the society fractured into competing organizations, with figures like Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater developing increasingly elaborate clairvoyant descriptions of invisible worlds, past lives, and occult anatomy. Theosophy introduced concepts like chakras, karma, and reincarnation to Western audiences before these ideas became commonplace. The Society's emphasis on Eastern wisdom, universal brotherhood, and the evolution of consciousness shaped the New Age movement, anthroposophy, and countless spiritual seekers who encountered Hindu and Buddhist concepts first through theosophical interpretation. Critics note that Theosophy often misrepresented the Asian traditions it claimed to preserve, filtering them through Victorian assumptions and racial hierarchies that placed white Europeans at the pinnacle of spiritual evolution. Yet Theosophy's historical impact remains undeniable, functioning as a crucial bridge between 19th century occultism and 20th century alternative spirituality. Next up is the Golden Dawn. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was founded in London in 1888 by three Freemasons, William Robert Woodman, William Wynne Westcott, and Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers. The order claimed legitimacy through cipher manuscripts, supposedly containing fragmentary rituals from a German Rosicrucian adept, though these documents were likely forged by Westcott himself. Regardless of its dubious origins, the Golden Dawn developed into the most influential magical order in modern Western occultism. The system synthesized Kabbalah, tarot, astrology, geomancy, alchemy, and Egyptian symbolism into an elaborate grade structure. Members progressed through initiations corresponding to the 10 Sephiroth on the Tree of Life, from neophyte through grades like Zelator and Philosophus, learning increasingly complex magical theory and practice at each stage. The Golden Dawn attracted remarkable individuals, including poet W.B. Yeats, actress Florence Farr, and occultist Aleister Crowley. Mathers, who became the order's dominant force, claimed contact with the secret chiefs, non-physical intelligences guiding the order's work. Internal conflicts erupted in 1900 when members questioned Mathers' authority and Crowley's rapid advancement through the grades. The order splintered into multiple factions, with various groups claiming authentic lineage. Despite organizational chaos, Golden Dawn teaching spread through published works, particularly Israel Regardie's complete publication of the order's rituals in the 1930s. The system's influence extends through virtually all contemporary Western ceremonial magic. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, taught to Golden Dawn neophytes, became perhaps the most widely practiced ritual in modern occultism. The order demonstrated that elaborate ceremonial magic could be systematized, taught, and practiced by dedicated students rather than remaining the province of isolated adepts. The democratization of magical knowledge, combined with the synthesis of diverse traditions into a coherent system, established the template for 20th century magical orders. Next up is Enochian Magic. Between 1582 and 1589, the Elizabethan mathematician and occultist John Dee, along with his scryer Edward Kelly, conducted elaborate sessions of spiritual communication. Kelly would gaze into a crystal or black obsidian mirror, while Dee recorded the visions and messages that emerged. The spirits, who identified themselves as angels, transmitted a complex magical system including a unique language, intricate tables of letters and numbers, and detailed instructions for contacting angelic hierarchies. The angels claimed this system represented the original language spoken by Adam in Eden, and the method by which Enoch walked with angels. Dee approached these sessions with profound seriousness, seeing them as a divine commission to recover prelapsarian wisdom. His extensive diaries document not just the magical material, but his prayers, doubts, and wrestling with whether these spirits serve God or Satan. The Enochian material lay largely dormant until the Golden Dawn incorporated it into their advanced magical curriculum in the late 19th century. Members like MacGregor Mathers and Aleister Crowley worked extensively with this system, particularly the Enochian calls or keys, 19 invocations in the angelic language. Crowley's work with the 30 aethers or Enochian planes, visionary realms described in the Enochian system, produced some of his most powerful mystical experiences and magical writings. The language itself follows consistent grammatical rules and contains a substantial vocabulary, leading some practitioners to treat it as a genuine angelic tongue. Regardless of its origin, magicians report that Enochian calls produce unusually intense results, sometimes frighteningly so. The system remains controversial even among ceremonial magicians, with some considering it the most powerful magical technology available and others warning against its dangers. The elaborate tables, the alien quality of the language, and the dramatic angelic cosmology give Enochian magic a distinctive character that sets it apart from other Western magical traditions. Next up is mystery schools. Ancient Mediterranean mystery cults offered initiatory experiences that promised spiritual transformation, secret knowledge, and favorable conditions after death. Unlike public civic religion with its open rituals and temples, the mysteries required initiation, maintained strict secrecy about their rites, and emphasized direct personal experience with the divine. The most famous were the Eleusinian Mysteries, celebrated for nearly 2,000 years near Athens. Initiates underwent the lesser mysteries in spring and could return to the greater mysteries in autumn, which involved fasting, procession to Eleusis, and experiences in the telesterion or hall of initiation. Classical sources praised the mysteries extravagantly. Cicero wrote that Athens gave the world nothing finer than the Eleusinian rites, which taught humanity not only to live with joy, but to die with better hope. What actually happened during the Eleusinian initiation remains unknown because initiates kept their oaths of secrecy remarkably well. Scholars speculate based on fragmentary evidence and later descriptions. The culminating vision in the telesterion likely involved revelation of sacred objects, dramatic reenactment of Persephone's descent to the underworld and return, and possibly the experience of dying and being reborn. Some researchers argue that participants consumed a psychoactive potion called kykeon, potentially containing ergot alkaloids similar to LSD, producing mystical experiences of death, rebirth, and union with the divine. Orphic mysteries, associated with the mythical poet Orpheus, taught that humans possess both earthly and divine nature, that the soul undergoes cycles of reincarnation, and that purification and initiation could break this cycle. Gold tablets buried with the Orphic initiates provide instructions for the afterlife journey, including what to say to the guardians of the underworld. These mysteries profoundly influenced Plato, Pythagoras, and early Christianity, which adopted initiatory structures and mystery language while condemning pagan content. The aura of ancient wisdom, transformative experience, and jealously guarded secrets has made mystery schools a persistent model for esoteric organizations. Next up is Ascended Masters. The concept of Ascended Masters emerged primarily through Theosophy, referring to spiritually advanced beings who have completed their earthly incarnations but remain engaged in guiding humanity's evolution. Helena Blavatsky claimed contact with these masters, particularly Moria and Kuthumi, who allegedly transmitted the teachings in her massive works through letters, telepathic communication, and rare physical meetings. She described them as members of a great white brotherhood, an organized hierarchy of perfected souls working from hidden locations in the Himalayas and elsewhere. These masters supposedly possess vast knowledge, extraordinary powers, and concern for humanity's spiritual development. The Ascended Master concept proliferated through movements that spun off from Theosophy. Guy Ballard's I Am activity in the 1930s introduced Saint Germain, a supposed 18th century alchemist and immortal master, as the primary teacher. The Ballards claimed Saint Germain appeared physically, gave them instruction, and granted them authority to spread his teachings throughout America. Elizabeth Clare Prophet's Church Universal and Triumphant further developed the master teachings, adding elaborate dictations from dozens of ascended beings including Jesus, Mother Mary, and various historical figures. Each movement featured charismatic leaders claiming exclusive or privileged contact with the masters, producing voluminous channeled messages mixing spiritual platitudes with specific instructions for followers. Critics point out the obvious pattern of authority claims backing human leaders, the masters conveniently supporting whatever doctrine the channel promotes, and the consistent failure of specific predictions made in the masters' names. Yet millions have found meaning in the concepts of wise beings guiding humanity from beyond, whether understood literally as actual entities or symbolically as archetypal wisdom. The masters serve a psychological and spiritual function, providing reassurance that humanity is not alone, that evolution has a purpose, and that help is available from those who have walked the path before. Next up is Siberian Shamanism. The word shaman itself comes from the Tungus people of Siberia, entering Western languages through Russian exploration and ethnographic accounts in the 17th and 18th centuries. The Siberian shamanic traditions vary across the vast regions but share common features. Shamans serve as intermediaries between the human community and the spirit world, entering trance states to journey to other realms, diagnose illness, retrieve lost souls, negotiate with spirits, and maintain cosmic balance. They typically wear elaborate costumes covered in metal ornaments, feathers, and symbolic objects, and use frame drums to induce altered states. The steady rhythm of drumming, sometimes described as the shaman's horse, carries consciousness into non-ordinary reality. Becoming a shaman often involves an initiatory crisis. The future shaman experiences a physical or mental breakdown, visions of dismemberment by spirits, symbolic death, and rebirth. Spirits disassemble the candidate's body, replace organs, insert magical objects, and reconstruct the individual with new capacities for seeing and traveling the spirit world. The influential study Shamanism, Archaic Techniques of Ecstasy, documented these patterns across Siberian and Central Asian cultures. Soviet authorities suppressed shamanic practice as superstition and backwardness, arresting shamans and confiscating ritual objects. After the Soviet collapse, shamanic traditions experienced revival, though inevitably changed by decades of disruption. Western neo-shamanism, particularly through Michael Harner's core shamanism, extracted techniques from Siberian and other indigenous traditions, stripping away cultural context to create a universal shamanic toolkit. This approach makes shamanic journey practice accessible to Westerners, but raises questions about cultural appropriation and whether shamanism, divorced from its original cosmology and community function, retains authentic power or becomes merely therapeutic technique. Next up is Mount Meru. In Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain cosmology, Mount Meru stands as the sacred mountain at the center of the universe. The Puranas describe it as 84,000 yojanas high, its peak reaching into the heavens, its base in the underworld. The sun, moon, and stars revolve around Meru. The gods dwell on its slopes and summit. 4 world continents extend in the cardinal directions from Meru, with the southern continent, Jambudvipa, representing the human realm. Rivers flow from the mountain, and wish-fulfilling trees grow on its slopes. Some descriptions give Meru 4 faces of different precious materials: gold, crystal, ruby, and lapis lazuli. The mountain functions as the organizing principle of reality itself, the point around which everything else orients. Buddhist cosmology adopted and adapted the Meru concept. Tibetan Thangka paintings depict the mountain surrounded by concentric oceans and mountain ranges, with various god realms, hungry ghost realms, and hell realms arranged in vertical layers. The structure represents both external cosmos and internal spiritual geography, with different levels corresponding to states of consciousness. Some scholars have attempted to identify Mount Meru with actual mountains, particularly Mount Kailash in Tibet, though traditional understanding treats Meru as existing on a different plane than ordinary geography. The mandala, a key meditation tool in Vajrayana Buddhism, often represents a celestial palace on the summit of Mount Meru, with the practitioner visualizing themselves at the center surrounded by enlightened beings. This cosmology retains profound symbolic power. Meru represents the notion that reality has a sacred center, that the cosmos possesses inherent structure and meaning, and that human existence occurs within a vast hierarchical reality extending far beyond ordinary perception. Whether understood mythologically or mystically, Mount Meru provides a vertical axis connecting underworlds, earthly existence, and celestial realms in a coherent whole. Next up is Agartha and Shambhala. These legendary locations represent hidden kingdoms or enlightened civilizations existing either underground or in remote regions of Central Asia. Shambhala appears in Tibetan Buddhist texts as a mystical kingdom where the Kala Chakra teachings are preserved. The kingdom is ruled by enlightened kings who will eventually emerge to defeat the forces of materialism and usher in a golden age. Traditional texts describe Shambhala as located north of the Himalayas, reachable only by those with sufficient spiritual realization. The journey to Shambhala functions as both literal quest and metaphor for the spiritual path. Some lineages teach that while Shambhala once existed as a physical place, it now persists on a different plane, accessible only through meditation and inner development. Agartha emerged through Western esoteric literature, particularly the French occultist Alexandre Saint-Yves d'Alvedre, who wrote about an underground kingdom ruled by enlightened masters in the late 19th century. His account blended theosophical concepts of hidden masters with speculation about hollow earth theories and subterranean civilizations. The Polish explorer Ferdynand Ossendowski's 1922 book, Beasts, Men, and Gods, described rumors he heard in Mongolia about the king of the world ruling from an underground realm. These accounts fed into both legitimate esoteric interest and darker appropriations. Nazi occultists became fascinated with Shambhala and Agartha, sending expeditions to Tibet seeking the source of Aryan racial superiority and lost spiritual technologies. This contamination has made the topics difficult to approach, yet the core symbolism remains powerful across cultures. Somewhere beyond ordinary maps exists a place where wisdom is preserved, where enlightened beings maintain knowledge that the outer world has lost, and from which help may come when humanity most needs it. Whether understood as literal locations, visionary realms, or symbols for awakened consciousness, these hidden kingdoms express the persistent hope that reality contains more than we currently know. Next up is scrying. Scrying refers to the practice of gazing into the reflective or translucent surfaces to induce visions, contact spirits, or perceive hidden information. The technique appears across cultures using various tools: crystal balls, black mirrors, bowls of water, polished metal, fire, smoke, or even pools of ink. The process typically involves relaxing the eyes and mind while maintaining soft focus on the scrying medium. Initial results often include optical effects, shadows and shapes forming in the surface, which gradually give way to more developed visions if the scryer achieves the proper state of consciousness. Some practitioners report the surface seeming to cloud over or fill with mist before images emerge. Others describe the visions appearing in the mind's eye rather than literally in the tool itself, with the physical object serving primarily as a focus for concentration. John Dee's obsidian mirror and crystal, now in the British Museum, represent the most famous scrying tools in Western occult history. As mentioned earlier in this tier, his scryer, Edward Kelly, used these instruments to receive the Enochian material, though Dee himself apparently lacked the ability to see visions directly. Medieval grimoires provide instructions for consecrating mirrors and crystals, specifying particular times and astrological conditions for construction and first use. The tools were often inscribed with divine names and angelic seals, different spirits supposedly appearing more readily in different media. Water scrying, or hydromancy, was considered safer than mirror work, which could potentially trap unwary practitioners or allow dangerous entities through. Contemporary occultists continue scrying practice, with some using traditional tools and others experimenting with computer screens or other reflective surfaces. Psychological explanations suggest scrying induces a light trance state where the subconscious mind projects images onto ambiguous visual stimuli, essentially creating a Rorschach test that the scryer interprets as external vision. Whether the source is spiritual entities, the deep psyche, or something else entirely, skilled scryers report remarkably detailed and sometimes verifiable information emerging through the practice. Next up is the Seal of Solomon. The Seal of Solomon, typically depicted as a hexagram or six-pointed star, appears throughout magical and mystical traditions as a symbol of divine power and protection. The symbol derives from legends about King Solomon, who according to Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions, possessed a magical ring that gave him authority over demons and spirits. The Testament of Solomon, a Greek text probably composed in the 1st to 3rd centuries CE, describes Solomon using his ring to compel demons to build a temple in Jerusalem. Each demon revealed its name, the angel who could bind it, and the specific afflictions it caused. This text established Solomon as the archetypal magician king, whose wisdom extended to commanding the entire spirit world. The hexagram became associated with Solomon, though earlier depictions sometimes show his seal as a pentagram or other symbols. Medieval and Renaissance grimoires like the Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon provide elaborate instructions for creating talismans bearing the seal to protect magicians during spirit evocation. The symbol supposedly creates a boundary that spirits cannot cross, protecting the magician while compelling entities to manifest visibly. The hexagram combines two triangles, one pointing up and one down, representing the union of opposites, fire and water, masculine and feminine, heaven and earth, microcosm and macrocosm. The symbolism connected the Seal of Solomon to Hermetic philosophy and alchemical thought. In Jewish tradition, the hexagram became known as the Magen of David or Shield of David, though this association developed later than its magical uses. The symbol appears on synagogues, amulets, and eventually the flag of Israel, where its magical origins are largely forgotten in favor of purely religious and national significance. The seal represents one of several symbols, including the pentagram, that circulate through magical practice, religious iconography, and secular culture with constantly shifting meanings. Next up is Neoplatonism and The One. Neoplatonism emerged in the 3rd century CE through the philosopher Plotinus, who synthesized Platonic philosophy with mystical and religious elements. His student Porphyry organized his teachings into the Enneads, 6 sets of 9 treatises covering metaphysics, cosmology, ethics, and the path to spiritual realization. At the center of Neoplatonic philosophy stands the One, an absolutely transcendent principle beyond all categories, qualities, and descriptions. The One is not a being among beings, but the source from which all existence flows. Plotinus wrote that the One has no need of anything, but is the good and source of all good. Because the One transcends all attributes, we can only approach it through negative theology, saying what it is not rather than what it is. From the One emanates the nous or divine mind, containing the eternal forms or archetypes of all things. From nous emanates the world soul, which animates the material cosmos. Individual human souls descend from the world soul into bodies, becoming trapped in matter and forgetting their divine origin. The spiritual path involves returning to the source through philosophical contemplation, ethical purification, and mystical practice. Plotinus described achieving kenosis, union with the One, through meditation that progressively transcends thought, images, and even the sense of self. He reportedly experienced this union multiple times, describing it as a state beyond duality, where the distinction between knower and known dissolves. Neoplatonism profoundly influenced Christian theology through figures like Augustine and Pseudo-Dionysius, Islamic philosophy through thinkers like Avicenna, and Jewish mysticism through Kabbalah. The Renaissance revival of Neoplatonism through Marsilio Ficino and the Florentine Academy shaped Western esotericism permanently. The vision of reality as emanating from a transcendent source, the emphasis on spiritual return through contemplation, and the synthesis of philosophy with mystical practice established patterns that echo through nearly every subsequent esoteric tradition in the West. Next up is Manly P. Hall. Manly Palmer Hall published The Secret Teaching of All Ages in 1928 at age 27, producing an encyclopedic survey of esoteric philosophy, symbolism, and mystery traditions. The oversized book, illustrated with hundreds of images, covered Pythagorean mathematics, Hermetic philosophy, Rosicrucian symbolism, Masonic ritual, alchemical processes, Kabbalistic doctrine, and comparative mythology. Hall wrote with genuine scholarship and deep synthesis, drawing connections between disparate traditions and presenting Western esotericism as a coherent whole. The book became a classic, introducing countless readers, including myself, to occult subjects and establishing Hall as a major voice in 20th century esoteric thought. He founded the Philosophical Research Society in Los Angeles in 1934, where he lectured for over 50 years on comparative religion, mysticism, and ancient wisdom. Hall's work emphasized the perennial philosophy, the idea that all authentic spiritual traditions contain the same essential truths expressed through different cultural forms. He taught that ancient mystery schools preserve sacred knowledge about the soul's journey, the structure of reality, and humanity's divine potential. This knowledge had been encoded in myths, symbols, and initiatory rituals to protect it from profanation while ensuring its transmission. Hall presented esotericism as complementary to, rather than opposed to, exoteric religion, with the mysteries offering deeper understanding available to those willing to study and contemplate. His lectures covered an astounding range of topics: Egyptian symbolism, Platonic philosophy, Native American shamanism, Buddhist meditation, tarot symbolism, and dream interpretation. Critics sometimes found his work too broad, sacrificing depth for breadth, and occasionally making historical claims that did not hold up to scholarly scrutiny. Yet Hall's genuine learning, clear presentation, and evident reverence for wisdom traditions made him enormously influential. He provided a comprehensive introduction to Western esotericism for general audiences, presenting complex material accessibly while maintaining intellectual seriousness. His work continues to serve as an entry point for people discovering that beneath conventional religion and materialist philosophy lies a vast tradition of mystical knowledge. Next up is Aleister Crowley and Thelema. Aleister Crowley remains the most famous and infamous occultist of the 20th century, a figure whose genuine magical achievements and deliberate provocations made him simultaneously influential and scandalous. Born in 1875 to a wealthy English family, Crowley joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in 1898, rapidly advancing through the grades before conflicts with other members led to his departure. In 1904, while in Cairo with his wife Rose, Crowley received the Book of the Law through an entity identifying itself as Aiwass, his holy guardian angel. This brief text proclaimed a new eon, the Aeon of Horus, and established Thelema as a spiritual philosophy centered on the law. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Thelema teaches that every individual possesses a true will, their authentic purpose and path in life, which they must discover and follow. Do what thou wilt does not mean do whatever you want in the moment, but rather discover and accomplish your true purpose, which aligns with cosmic order. The supplementary law, love is the law, love under will, emphasizes that true will operates through love rather than selfish desire. Crowley spent the rest of his life developing Thelemic philosophy, writing extensively on magic, yoga, and mysticism. He founded the AA, a magical order teaching his system, and later became the head of the Ordo Templi Orientis, organizing it around Thelemic principles. His magical diary and published works document experience with ceremonial magic, tantric sex practices, drug use, and yogic meditation. The British press called him the wickedest man in the world, a title Crowley embraced, deliberately courting scandal through provocation and boundary crossing. He died in poverty in 1947, but his influence grew posthumously. Thelema continues through various organizations, and Crowley's writings on magic, particularly magic in theory and practice, remain foundational texts for contemporary occultists, regardless of whether they accept Thelemic philosophy. Next up is the Bardo Thodol, commonly known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The Bardo Thodol, which translates as liberation through hearing in the intermediate states, belongs to the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism and is attributed to the 8th century master Padmasambhava. The text provides instructions meant to be read aloud to a dying or recently deceased person, guiding consciousness through the bardos or intermediary states between death and rebirth. According to the teaching, after death, the consciousness separates from the body and experiences a series of visions, peaceful deities, wrathful deities, and eventually the 6 realms of rebirth. These appearances are not external entities, but projections of the dying person's own mind. Recognition of this fact leads to liberation. Failure to recognize leads to continued wandering in samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth. The text instructs the deceased to recognize the clear light of reality appearing at the moment of death. If this opportunity is missed, subsequent bardos offer additional chances for liberation, though they become progressively more difficult as the consciousness becomes more confused. The peaceful and wrathful deities appear in mandala formations, their terrifying aspects meant to shock the consciousness into recognition of its true nature. Y.W. Evans Wentz published the first English translation in 1927 with a psychological commentary by Carl Jung in later editions. This translation presented the Bardo Thodol to Western audiences, where it found readers far beyond Buddhist circles. Timothy Leary, Ralph Metzner, and Richard Alpert adapted the text in the psychedelic experience, using its structure as a guide for LSD trips. This appropriation troubled Tibetan teachers, who emphasized that the text addresses literal death and rebirth, not drug-induced altered states. The Bardo Thodol has influenced Western approaches to death and dying, hospice care, and conversations about consciousness after death. Whether understood literally as a map of post-mortem experience, or metaphorically as describing states of consciousness, the text presents a vision where death is not annihilation, but transition, and where recognition can lead to liberation. Next up is entheogenic rituals. Entheogen means generating the divine within, a term coined in 1979 by scholars seeking a more accurate alternative to psychedelic or hallucinogen. Entheogens are substances used in religious and spiritual contexts to induce mystical experiences, visions, and altered states of consciousness. The use of such substances appears throughout human history and across cultures. The Eleusinian Mysteries likely involve psychoactive potion called kaikion, as mentioned earlier. Vedic priests use soma, a plant whose identity remains debated. Mesoamerican cultures use psilocybin mushrooms, peyote, and ayahuasca in ceremonial contexts. Indigenous peoples of Siberia consumed Amanita muscaria mushrooms. These practices were embedded in complex cultural and religious frameworks with trained specialists, ritual protocols, and theological interpretations that gave meaning to the experiences. Contemporary entheogenic use takes several forms. Native American church members use peyote as a sacrament, a practice protected by law in the United States. Brazilian churches like Santo Daime use ayahuasca in Christian-influenced ceremonies. Western seekers travel to Peru and elsewhere for ayahuasca retreats. Some psychedelic researchers argue for the therapeutic and spiritual potential of these substances under controlled conditions. Studies at Johns Hopkins and other institutions document mystical experiences induced by psilocybin that participants rate among the most meaningful of their lives. Lastly in this tier is Moloch. Moloch appears in the Hebrew Bible as a Canaanite deity associated with child sacrifice. The Book of Leviticus explicitly prohibits Israelites from offering their children to Moloch, and 2 Kings describes reforms by King Josiah aimed at eliminating Moloch worship. Ancient sources describe a bronze statue heated by fire into which living children were placed as offerings. The historicity of these practices remains debated among scholars. Some argue that Moloch represents a genuine Canaanite deity whose worship included child sacrifice. Others suggest that Moloch was a type of sacrifice rather than a specific god, or that biblical accounts exaggerated or invented these practices as propaganda against rival religions. Archaeological evidence of child sacrifice in Carthage and other Phoenician colonies lends some support to the practice having existed. Moloch entered esoteric and occult discourse primarily as a symbol of terrible power demanding ultimate sacrifice. Milton's Paradise Lost placed Moloch among the fallen angels, describing him as besmeared with blood of human sacrifice. The image of children consumed by fire became a powerful metaphor for systems that devour the young. Allen Ginsberg's poem Howl uses Moloch as a symbol for destructive aspects of modern industrial society. Moloch, whose mind is pure machinery. Moloch, whose blood is running money. In conspiracy theories and occult speculation, Moloch appears as a demon worshipped by secret societies and elite groups supposedly conducting hidden sacrificial rituals. The historical Moloch, whatever practices that name actually designated, has been transformed through literature and imagination into an archetypal image of the god who demands the sacrifice of innocence, whether understood literally in ancient rituals or metaphorically in the various ways societies consume their children's futures. That completes the third tier of the Esotericism Iceberg. Next week, we'll descend into Tier 4, where we enter the realm of dedicated study. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. For early access to the next video, you can now subscribe to my Patreon or become a member here on YouTube for just $5 per month. For one-time donations, there are PayPal and Coffee links in the description and pinned in the comments. Check out my website Occulys.com and the other history channel I narrate for called Folks of Yore. Again, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.